It was one of those ordinary evenings that felt so routine and predictable that nothing about it seemed capable of turning into something dramatic or memorable, because I had just finished another exhausting shift at the warehouse where I worked long hours, counting inventory, scanning barcodes, and staring at small printed numbers for so many hours that by the end of the day my eyes always felt strained, dry, and slightly painful. And lately the situation had been getting worse because my vision had gradually declined over the past year. Yet I kept postponing the idea of buying new glasses due to financial pressures and other priorities, convincing myself repeatedly that I could manage for a little longer, which was why, on that particular Tuesday evening, I stopped at the small neighborhood grocery store near my apartment, simply intending to buy a few basic items before heading home to cook dinner and rest. The store itself was the kind of place that had not changed in years, with narrow aisles packed tightly with products, slightly flickering fluorescent lights humming overhead, and shelves arranged in a way that made it easy to recognize the layout even with tired eyes. And as I moved toward the cooking oil section, I noticed several brands lined up almost identically, each with labels printed in tiny fonts that blended together when I tried to focus, forcing me to lean closer, squint harder, and tilt the bottle slightly toward the light. Yet despite my efforts, the words remained blurred and unreadable, leaving me frustrated because I specifically needed one that was labeled cholesterol-free due to my doctor's advice, and it was at that moment, after struggling for nearly a minute, that I noticed a young store clerk nearby stocking canned goods while wearing the store's red apron. Looking approachable and focused on his work, I politely asked him if he could help me by reading the small print on the bottle, because my eyesight was not strong enough to see it clearly, and he responded immediately with a friendly smile and a relaxed tone that suggested he had no problem assisting customers. Taking the bottle from my hand and beginning to read the label aloud in a calm voice, listing the ingredients and health information while I listened attentively, feeling relieved that the situation was so simple and ordinary. But before he could finish reading, a sharp, disapproving voice suddenly cut through the quiet atmosphere of the aisle, asking in an accusatory tone what exactly was happening there. And when I turned around, I saw a middle-aged woman standing a few feet away with her arms crossed tightly and her expression tense, as though she had just witnessed something deeply inappropriate rather than a routine customer interaction. She questioned why I was making the employee read labels for me, implying that I was taking advantage of him or wasting his time. And although I calmly explained that I simply had difficulty reading small text due to poor eyesight and had politely requested assistance, she appeared unwilling to accept this explanation, instead responding with increasing irritation and suspicion, accusing me of harassing staff under the pretense of needing help, which left me stunned because her reaction seemed completely disproportionate to the situation. And the clerk himself tried to reassure her that he did not mind helping and that it was part of customer service. But she dismissed his words and continued speaking in a louder voice that attracted attention from other shoppers who began watching from a distance. As the tension escalated, she insisted that people like me created unsafe environments by bothering employees unnecessarily. Even though I had remained calm, respectful, and cooperative throughout the interaction, and I attempted to de-escalate the situation by repeating that I meant no trouble and only needed assistance due to my vision limitations. Yet instead of calming down, she pulled out her phone and declared that she was calling the police, which initially seemed so absurd that I thought she must be exaggerating or attempting to intimidate me, but within seconds she was actually speaking into her phone, REPO or TING, that a man was harassing store employees and refusing to stop. And hearing those words filled me with a mix of disbelief, embarrassment, and anxiety as nearby customers quietly moved away while glancing toward me with cautious expressions. During the long minutes that followed while waiting for the police to arrive, the atmosphere in the aisle became painfully tense and uncomfortable as I stood there trying to process how such a minor situation had spiraled into something so serious, while the young clerk repeatedly apologized in a low voice even though none of it was his fault, and I reassured him that he had done nothing wrong. Yet inside I felt deeply unsettled by the realization that someone could so quickly assume malicious intent from a simple request for help, turning a routine interaction into a public accusation that threatened my dignity and reputation. When the police officers eventually arrived, their presence instantly drew even more attention as flashing lights reflected through the store windows, and they approached calmly to ask what had happened, giving the woman an opportunity to explain her version of events in a dramatic and urgent tone, claiming that I had been harassing staff. But when the officers asked for clarification from both me And the clerk, the truth emerged clearly and quickly, as I explained in a steady voice that I had only requested assistance reading a label because of poor eyesight, and the clerk confirmed that I had been polite and cooperative, which caused the officers' expressions to shift from concern to quiet understanding. They informed the woman gently, but firmly, that asking for help from an employee was not a crime and did not justify a police call, explaining that emergency services were meant for genuine threats rather than misunderstandings or personal judgments. And although she attempted to defend her actions by claiming she was trying to maintain order and safety, her confidence had clearly diminished as she realized that her accusations had no basis. And after a brief but awkward silence, she left the store quickly without making further eye contact, her departure marked by the sound of her footsteps echoing against the tiled floor. The officers apologized to me for the inconvenience and unnecessary distress caused by the situation, reassuring me that I had done nothing wrong. And after they left, the store returned gradually to its normal rhythm, with conversations resuming and shoppers returning to their routines as though the entire incident had been an unusual but fleeting disruption, while the clerk handed me the bottle again and confirmed with a reassuring smile that it was indeed cholesterol-free, which finally allowed me to complete the task that had triggered the entire chain of events. As I walked home later that evening carrying my groceries, I reflected deeply on what had happened, realizing that the most unsettling aspect was not the temporary embarrassment or the police involvement, but the speed with which a stranger had judged me negatively without understanding the context, demonstrating how easily ordinary situations can be misinterpreted when assumptions replace empathy. And this realization stayed with me long after the incident, influencing how I viewed everyday interactions with others. The following week, I finally purchased new glasses, and the moment I put them on and saw the world in sharp clarity again felt like regaining a sense of control and independence. Yet despite that improvement, the memory of that evening remained vivid because it served as a reminder that sometimes people do not need suspicion or confrontation, but simply patience and understanding, and that even the smallest acts of assistance, such as reading a label for someone, can make a meaningful difference in another person's life, especially when offered without judgment. Since then, whenever I see someone asking for help in a store, whether they are elderly, tired, or simply unable to reach or read something, I feel a quiet respect for the courage it takes to admit needing assistance, because I know from personal experience how vulnerable that moment can be. And I also remember how quickly kindness can be overshadowed by misunderstanding if empathy is absent, which is why that ordinary Tuesday evening, despite its unexpected chaos, ultimately left me with a deeper appreciation for patience, compassion, and the importance of giving others the benefit of the doubt before assuming the worst.